So today, as with any important chemistry lesson, we're going to begin with Oompa Loompas. Now today's lesson focuses on the Gene Wilder 1970s version of the Oompa Loompas, not the Johnny Depp version, irregardless of which one you find more compelling. We are going to talk about the old 1970s cheesy version. So, we recall that the Oompa Loompas were living with Willy Wonka in the factory as slave labor, free slave labor, because it was like a protection racket, right? He had taken them, he had saved them from the monsters, the vermicious canids, the schnoz goblins of their original home in Loompaland. And so today we're going to focus on, well, what were they leaving behind? What was life like in Loompaland? Why did they want to get away from it? And what was things like there? So, it's a very, very different society. We're going to learn a lot today about Oompa Loompa culture, about their architecture, all sorts of wonderful things. And so the first thing that you have to understand about Loompaland is that their value system, their culture, and their architecture are all kind of combined. And it's a very different kind of world, and you got to kind of wrap your head around it a little bit differently. So here is an Oompa Loompa landscape. We're going to talk today about the kinds of houses that they lived in. And the first thing, you can almost think of it like a communist country back in the 60s and 70s where everyone was kind of forced into the government housing. Although they didn't think of it as forced into, it's just kind of what they had. And so we had a couple of important Oompa Loompas that we need to talk about. We need to talk about Mr. Polly, who was the main architect, and Mr. Hund, who kind of ran the places. So Polly's the architect, and Hund runs the apartment complexes. And so let's start to look at the apartment complexes. So the apartment complexes start on the ground floor. You have a certain kind of room called a special. So Oompa Loompas could come and they could move into the special. Now the special, you have to understand, if you go to the store and order, if you go to a restaurant and order the special meatloaf, it's not because it's really awesome, it's because they made too much meatloaf and they're trying to get rid of it, right? So we're going to, this is the meatloaf version of the housing complex. You don't really want to live in a special. It's pretty, it's kind of dank. It's got dirt floors. It's got an outhouse. It doesn't even have indoor plumbing. It's pretty sparse. And so you don't necessarily want to live in a special, but it is really, really what? Special. We got special, that's true. Not safe is actually true. We're going to get to that in a second. I was going to say cheap. It is the cheapest place you can live in Loompaland. And so what makes it not safe? It's on the ground, and that's where the schnoz goblins live, right? So it's actually better, safer to live up high. So because of this whole nature, schnoz goblins, vermicious canids, they cannot climb. So so it's generally preferred to live up high, which is why we have sort of an inverted V shape for the Oompa Loompa housing that Polly designed. And so the second floor has a special on it as well, but that's not all it has. Polly started to realize that with all these cheap rooms, he wasn't making any money, and so he decided to introduce some more expensive rooms that were a little nicer, and he called those the plush rooms. And he decided to put more of the more expensive ones because he wanted to make a little money. So there's your plushes and there's your specials, and let's try to center this a little bit better and move these over. There we go. So the first floor has a special and the second floor has a special as well, and 3 plushes. The third floor, here's the thing about Polly, he's not real creative. So every floor is kind of a copy of the floor below it. So on the third floor he has a what? Special. Oh no! I grabbed the wrong color. He has a special. And actually the rooms get a little bigger as you go up as well. And then we have, what else? How many? 3 plushes. 1, 2, 3 plushes. And kind of tell that we're going to have another kind of room up there as well, aren't we? And the next kind of room is going to be, I didn't really tell you about the plushes. I should probably tell you more about them. They're actually, we said, more expensive. Why? Well, they're a little nicer. They're kind of what you would expect if you moved into just some standard apartment, you know, basic cable. You got carpet on the floor and your toilet works, but it's nothing special. And so that brings us to the third floor. You have a third kind of room introduced, and that is the deluxe. Now, the deluxe is starting to get pretty nice. Now you have your big flat screen TV, you got satellite included in the rent, you maybe have a big nice walk-in shower and all sorts of nice things in the kitchen, and so you can kind of see how that works. And the deluxes are even more expensive than the plushes. Now, you guys are, Polly's mind is kind of easy to read. If you were to construct a fourth floor, what would be on it? One special. I keep doing that. One special. And 3 plushes. That's right. They should be bigger, but I'm not going to run out of room, so I'm not going to make them bigger. And what else? 5 deluxes. And can you predict what would be next? Would there be another kind of room? Let's not worry about names. Would there be another kind of room? And how many rooms would there be? First floor we had 1, then we added 3 more on the next floor, and we added 5, and now we're going to add 7 is correct. And these are really, really fancy, so you know what we call them? Fancies. Those are all the fancies. So we have the special, which is kind of sketchy, the plush, which is kind of your basic amenities, the deluxes are really nice, and the fancies are super nice. This is like tennis courts, hot tubs, you know, passes to the spa and all that nice stuff. Alright, so that is the basic architecture. Now let's talk about the Oompa Loompas and the landlord and whatnot. The first thing you probably need to understand about Loompa Loompas is that they are a deeply religious people. Now, they're not religious in the sense that you and I might think of religion. You and I might think about going to church or doing this or doing that. But Oompa Loompas are extremely, extremely serious about their principles, specifically their principle of Aufbau, which is a weird word for us, but in the Oompa Loompa language it makes sense. And it's kind of like it's their guiding principle of life, of everything. And if we were to kind of, the word doesn't translate very well, but if you try to understand what the principle of Aufbau is, we would probably use a word like this: cheapskate. We would think of Oompa Loompas as really, really, really awful cheapskates, super tight with the buck. They'll never spend a penny. They absolutely don't have to. But you have to understand, it's not because they're you know, cheap. It's because of they have this. It's almost like this frugality. They believe that everything should be very efficient. Everything should be done in the most efficient way possible. It was actually very good for their society, and you know, kind of everyone do the right thing, no waste. So they would call it frugal. We would call it being a cheapskate, as you will see as we go through. They are extremely cheap. So the Oompa Loompas, they now come in and they start living, and based on what they safety, where do they want to live? In the higher ups. But based on their principle of Aufbau, they want to live where? They want to live on the floor. Even if it's your religious principle, would you die for it? Maybe they would. So it's that important. So where do the Oompa Loompas move in then? Special. In fact, they live in, by the way, we didn't talk about this, but this is the first floor special, this is the second, this is the third, and this is the fourth. Even if you're still in a special, they do get more expensive as you go up. So, where does every Oompa Loompa want to live? First floor special, the bottom, that's correct. And, so what happened when Polly opens this place up is that, guess how many Oompa Loompas moved into the first floor special? All of them, all 42 million of them, moved into the first floor special. It got a little crowded, and Polly's like, crap, I'm not making any money at all. And so, so what he said was, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. You're going to, and so he's upset. He goes to Hund, and Hund has a rule. He makes a rule. Hund says, okay, we have this problem. Everyone's living there. So you're going to pay by the Oompa Loompa, not by the room. You're going to pay by the Oompa Loompa. You're not going to pay by the room. So if I'm an Oompa Loompa, if it costs me $50 to rent a special, it costs me $50 to rent a special. And if I bring someone else in to live with me, still costs $50. We don't split the rent. It's $50 to get in, no matter what. And he thought, well, you know, this is going to make it a little bit more economically advantaged to just get your own room, because you're not going to pay $50 to live with 6,000 other people, right? You'll pay $60 to live by yourself. Makes sense, right? He was wrong. Every Oompa Loompa said, okay, I'll live with 42 million other Oompa Loompas down here and not pay the extra $2 to live up there. And so Hund's rule didn't solve the problem, and so they basically had to make a new rule. Polly came in and said, I'm not making any money, this is a problem. And so Polly makes a rule. Here's Polly's